how's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's Q&A. So I would like to thank everyone personally, each and every one of you, for a great 2024. Hopefully 2025 is even better, both for the channel, for myself, for my family, and for everyone watching this video, you, your family, and everything you work for, everything you love, and all that good stuff. Hopefully, 2025 brings us all some health, some happiness, some money, some travels, whatever may be on your bucket list or to-do list or list of things to get done or achieve. Hopefully that is true and comes true in 2025. Hopefully 2024 was good to you. If it wasn't, just think about it as 2025, whole new year, and let those goals and ambitions and everything come to fruition. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first video of the week, question of the week, excuse me. And it is, so this person has a second gear hard shift. So this wasn't on a Honda. I believe he has a Caravan or something along those lines. But anyways, this would apply to a lot of different cars. So harsh second to third gear, could be 1 to 2, could be 2 to 3, whatever the case may be. But this is isolated to one gear, so we're going to try to keep it to that. So a couple things that it may be. So you could have a bad pressure switch or shift solenoid for that gear. Also, you could have some compromised fluid, so some burnt fluid. Now, typically, I would expect if it's fluid that it would be, all the gears and not just one gear. But sometimes, these things are funny. So take a look at your fluid level. If it does have a dipstick, if it doesn't, then obviously, if you haven't done it in a while, maybe a good time to do it. Although, if you're having some shift quality issues, then it's possible that it may do more harm than good. So just keep that in mind. Also, it could be a filter. So if you have a trans filter, sometimes they're external, sometimes they're internal, sometimes it has both of them. Most times they are serviceable. So if they are serviceable, I recommend doing them probably every 60,000 miles or so. Fluid every 30, filters every 60. If you have a Honda 6-speed transmission, I would highly recommend doing the fluid every 15,000 miles, especially if you have a vehicle that's loaded with people, things of that nature, or you tow or whatever the case may be. And lastly, another thing that may be an issue, maybe it's just a software issue here. It could be sometimes these things are reprogrammable. They come out, they do some testing, there's some feedback, and they adjust the software at that point. Could also be an engine mount of some sort, of transmission mount, but again, that would probably have some harsh engagement and harsh second or third gear, first, third or fourth, and things of that nature. So just some things, not all the possibilities, but some things you could look for, and hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so the next question is, what are my thoughts on shorter oil change intervals, specifically on turbo engines? So if you watch this channel, you know that I'm all about early and aggressive maintenance, more so on turbocharged engines. You got to think about it, right? These cars have a turbo. This turbo runs at a lot of RPM and creates a lot more heat than a normal engine would, so a naturally combusted engine would. So a lot of times these issues don't start, or you don't start seeing them until 100,000 miles, but the issue actually starts early on and starts creating a domino effect. By the time you realize that you have an issue, it's too far too late. So I would personally recommend, and this is what I do on my vehicles, 3,000 miles. Pick your oil of choice, make sure it's recommended for the manufacturer, all the specifications meet. I personally like upgrading to a 5W30. Now that's completely up to you. 0W20 is specifically for emissions purposes. So if you run anything else, run 5W30 and you will be okay. I've been on 5W30 on my TLX basically since about 6,000 miles or so whenever I did that third oil change. And yes, I do like to do my oil changes early. And the first one, I do it after 8,000 miles. Then I do it again at 3,000 miles. And then every 3,000 miles from there. Now, you don't have to follow this if you don't want to, but that's my professional opinion. And I guarantee if I were to take my engine apart in 200,000 miles, it would be brand new looking in there. There'd be absolutely no sludge in there. Now, you have these turbos cooking these engine oils, and I guarantee you if you follow the manufacturer, algorithm, that chances are by the time you reach 50, 60,000 miles, it already look brownish, yellowish brownish, and by 100 plus thousand miles, you're going to have some sludge. Now, the algorithm has been a little bit more aggressive as of late, which I like, but if you have a older, like a 10th generation Honda, then I would definitely recommend 3,000 miles. Do not follow the algorithm. The 11th generation seems to be a lot more aggressive, which is great. I think Honda realized that they were making a mistake. And again, everyone likes to go, well, Honda recommends A to B, whatever the case may be. And why not follow their suggestions? They also recommend skipping your oil filter change every other oil change. So if you want to go by that, then go ahead and skip your oil filter, which none of you probably will do. And if you do, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but this is my personal experience, my personal opinion. Every car that I see with long excessive oil changes at one point or another leads to having some issues. And again, these issues start today, but you don't start seeing effects and damage that it caused up until later on in the car's life. So hopefully that answers this question for you. So the next question is, this person doing their time belt on their Honda J Series at 100,000 miles, which is fine. What are some things to look out for and to do while you're in there? So when you're doing a time belt on these J Series, you should be replacing the timing belt, you should be replacing a water pump, timing belt tensioner, and the dry belt. This is what we do at our dealer. Very rarely do these camshaft seals leak, although we always take a look. If they're looking, then obviously it's time to replace them. If you want to go ahead and replace them, go ahead. A lot of people like to change the bearings as well. So the pivoting tensioner that the tensioner goes onto, the adjuster, it's called, and the idler for the time belt, some people like to buy the kits and replace them. It's not necessary. They don't go bad, but if you want to go ahead and do them, then go ahead and do them. Also, make sure you're changing your coolant. As your water pump, you're going to leak out all the antifreeze, and just replace it with OEM coolant only. Do not add any additives or any other coolants. They are corrosive, and you will be causing yourself a lot of issues down the road. Other things you could look is obviously check for oil leaks. Now, the crankshaft seal rarely leaks, although the oil pump O-ring starts to leak. So that's something very common and something you want to look at while you're there. That is the right time to reseal the oil pump if needed. Now, if it's only a very light sweat, you could probably leave it alone if you want to. And by the second timing belt, if you get there at around 200,000 miles, will be time to do it then. Again, play it by ear, see if it's leaking. If you want to address it, great. If it's very minimal, you don't want to address it, it's not going to cause any harm. Obviously, it's only going to get worse, and eventually, and we see this a lot, as a car ages, by the second timing belt, it is leaking pretty badly. Now, if you follow the time and you're there early, let's say by mileage, but not by year, so we recommend every 105 and 7 years or so. And you're at 7 years, but you only have 50,000 miles, do the time belt anyways. Another thing that we check all the time is the passenger engine mount. They are a high failure point. So you're there, you have to kind of take it out. You can work around it. I know some techs don't like to take it out. I like to work with space. Regardless, you're there. If you start seeing some cracks, chances are it's not going to last until the next timing belt, and it's time to change it. If you ignore that engine mount at that point, you're going to start putting more stress on the front mount and all the other mounts, but primarily that front mount. So by you ignoring that passenger mount, you're going to cause yourself a front mount to go bad, which is way, way, way more expensive than just doing that passenger mount. So just some things to look for. Obviously, also look at your manual tensioner for the serpentine belt. So they're not manual, but they're pre-tension. So look at that. If it looks like it's anything is wrong with it, it's very weak or anything of that nature, then it's time to change it at that point. Just some things to look for. The oil filter housing is included in that oil pump reseal. And that's basically it. If you wanted to go and do your valve adjustment, this would be the right time to do it, although it's not really overlapping. So that's something that's a completely separate service. And again, good time to do it, not necessarily needed, but I like to recommend it at that time because you don't want to wait and then cause some more issues down the line. So hopefully that answers the question for you. Next question is, what are my thoughts and my opinion on why Honda quality has declined? So I think a couple of things play into factor. A, they're trying to keep up with everyone else and all this tech and stuff. And I think that obviously plays a big part of it. Now, COVID obviously had a big part of it to do so. Honda has been declining for at least a decade, in my opinion, but COVID kind of ramped up things. So there were supply issues. There was obviously probably worker issues, and all these things kind of led up to this big, massive surge in like recalls and things of that nature. Now, recalls have always been around, but obviously Honda has had a big upscale in recalls and a big incline in recalls as of late. Now, it's nice that Honda is addressing them, but we don't want to be seeing all these recalls. Obviously, as an owner, as a technician for the company, these recalls just slow everything down. There's a lot of people that are, annoyed and upset with the company, and rightfully so. So Honda does do a good job of putting out a ton of service bulletins that are just minor issues sometimes that we do address. As they come in if needed. A lot of them are just only if the customer complains about it, then we address. Sometimes it's recalls, which at that point we do all of them. Once it's a recall, you have no choice. You have to get it done. As far as when you bring it in. Now, you could decline it, which I wouldn't recommend, but you could, in most cases, decline it if you chose to do so. So I know, again, so they want to keep up with everyone else with all this tech, because for a long time there, Honda, didn't have a lot of tech in their vehicles, and they still don't, but they're trying to start add a lot of this tech to the cars, which, if the price kind of stays relative and a slight increase and you're adding all this tech, obviously there has to be a compromise in quality somewhere, or there would be a huge surge in price. So they have gone up in price. There has been some added tech. It's just not a great combination at this time. Again, COVID kind of messed with everything. So just a lot of different angles, a lot of different things coming together at once, causing all these quality issues. Hopefully 2025 is a better year for them. Now, there is allegedly some more recalls coming out. I'm not going to speak on those at this time because it came from a source that came from another source. So until I actually see it in paper or on a computer screen, I'm not going to talk about those at this time. If they do come about, obviously I'll have the updates for you guys, and we could all talk about it at that time. So hopefully that answers the question for you. So last but not least, question of a week. And again, if you want a chance of one of your questions being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below. So power steering pump noises, what could be some of the causes? So this is specifically for hydraulic power steering systems. So if you have a newer vehicle of any nature, this probably won't apply to you, as everything has moved to electronic steering. So most common things we see are leaking power steering pumps. They don't necessarily have to be leaking to be causing a noise. Also, we see them starting to leak at the O-rings at lines, so anywhere from a rubber to a metal line where there's a clamp, and the rubber dries up over time, and it creates little air passages where the pump picks up air, causing this noise. So look anywhere from pump to rack to back for sweating on these hoses. If there's any sweating and the lines are hard, so the rubber hoses are hard, it's probably having some issue and causing some of these noises. Obviously, if the rack is leaking, that could also be causing a noise, or if there's a pinched line somewhere. So if the car was in an accident and it was a 3/8 hard line and now it's down to a 1/4 inch, that's going to restrict some flow and cause some noises as well. So another thing to look at is sometimes racks aren't very visible. So take a look. If your reservoir is dropping, then there is a leak somewhere, even though you might not see it. So look at the rack where it meets the steering column, and look at the bellow boots. If the bellow boots from underneath look like they're a little bit damp, poke a tiny hole in it if you choose to do so, and see if there's fluid dripping out of there. I already know if there's moisture in there and they're wet, it's already leaking, there's no need to do that. But if you wanted to check for yourself, yes, you're going to make a hole. Regardless, it's already leaking at that point. But just something, if you want to verify and confirm it, or you could go ahead and break out the clamp, but then you need special clamp again and pliers to put it back in the case it's not leaking. But if you're seeing a wet bellow boot, specifically from underneath when they initially start, chances are there is a leak there. So check for any point from a metal to rubber, or any high pressure hose, anywhere where there's a clamp, a compression clamp, or anything of that nature, for any wetness. If there's any sort of staining or anything sweating, chances are there's a leak there. Go from the obvious first. If there's a leak at a hose, don't go and replace the pump. It's going to be a lot more expensive. If you replace and fix that leak and then it's still making noise and everything else looks nice and dry, then I would say go ahead and recommend a pump. If there is a kink or anything on a line or a hose, then obviously replace that before doing anything else, unless if there's a visible leak as well. And this usually happens when the car is in some sort of front end collision. So hopefully that answers the question for you. I hope everyone has a great 2025, and I'll catch you next year.